And I look down at the river and it's all white, frozen across, and I see this massive being.
This is a great episode, guys. You don't want to miss 1 second of it. First up on the show, I've got John with me. And John had a really strange encounter one day when he was out in the middle of Alberta, Canada, in the wilderness. And he happened to look over to the right and saw this massive Bigfoot creature walking across a lake that was frozen over. Really strange encounter. We're going to get into every detail. Also got a few other really strange encounters in store for you guys tonight. You don't want to miss 1 second of this episode. But before we get into any of it, I just want to say thanks for being here tonight. Couldn't do this podcast without you. If you've got an encounter you would like to send me, you can send it to me by email at mysteriesunknownpodcast@gmail.com. But let's jump right to these stories.
Where I live in Canada, I'm about five hours straight north of Great Falls, Montana. Where my encounter was probably another 5.5 hours north of here. So, like I tell everybody, like 80% of the Canadian population lives within 200 miles of the U.S. border. So, anything north of that, there's not a big population, right? So I was working on a seismic crew, and what seismic is, it's oil and gas exploration. So we're the guys that go in to, to find where the oil and gas is under the ground. When we approach like a pond or a slough or a valley or anything, the line still goes through, right? Like, so if there's a river, then what we do is we cross the river. Like we usually seismics, a lot of it's in the wintertime, right? Because up north in Alberta and Canada, it's all muskeg, right? So you can't get machines or trucks in when the ground's not frozen because it's like quicksand. It's like northern quicksand is what they call it. So it gets wintertime. So when we cross rivers, like the rivers are frozen over. So one night we were working and we were coming down this cut line with all the equipment, and we ended up coming to a river crossing. So to put in perspective, when you're in the bush, right? These roads that we're on that have bridges and stuff, they're like leased roads, logging roads. Like these aren't well-traveled roads. These are bush roads, right? So for bridges, like the bridge crossing we had to go to get back around to the same side we were at to start was probably an hour away. So it's a long drive. Like there's very, very few bridges once you get like in the bush, right? So I was in this truck and we're driving through the bush, and we had to cross this bridge. So I don't know, quite a ways away, we ended up coming across this bridge, and it's everything's like frozen solid. It's probably 20, 30 below out there. It's January. It's really like it's dark, like up there, like sunlight's basically from 8, 9 o'clock in the morning till 3:34, right? Other than that, everything's pitch black. So it wasn't nighttime, but it was dark. It was probably 6 or 7 at night anyways. So we ended up crossing this river. Everything's frozen solid, right? Everything's covered in snow. The moonlight's out, which it really helped, or I wouldn't have saw anything. So we come across this bridge, and I look to my right out of the passenger side of the truck, and I look down at the river, and it's all white, frozen across, and I see this massive being walking across the river, and it was standing upright like a human, but he was he or she, I don't know what it is, sorry, not trying to be funny, but it was walking in a long stride, like taking really long strides and swinging its arms, like almost like marching, right? And I was like, holy mackerel, what the heck is this, right? Um, so I'm watching this thing, and it just keeps walking across the river. And the guy that's driving the truck, I didn't say nothing because I was stunned. Like I couldn't speak, right? Like I just couldn't stop staring at this thing, right? And I was just, all I could do was stare out the passenger window, and I just watch this thing until we crossed the river and it was gone. But like it was very, very large. It was black from where I saw it. And like it was like long strides swinging its arms. And the thing that got me was like that I think about it now was like, like you're driving a diesel truck across a bridge in the middle of nowhere. You'd think this thing would have looked up, but it didn't, right? It just stood like stared forward, and it didn't even look, right. It just marched across. And yeah, like we see a lot of stuff in the bush working out there, right? So like when we're working in BC and stuff, you see bears, grizzly bears, wolves, you see moose, everything. You see all the animals, right? All the time. But when I saw this, it just it stunned me, right? So when we crossed the bridge, I looked at the driver and I said, I just saw a Sasquatch. And he looks at me and kind of laughs. I thought like, okay, no matter what I say, he won't believe me. But anyway, so we get back to camp and I'm telling all the boys what I saw, right? And they're just all laughing, right? Because the province beside us, British Columbia, they have a beer company that actually has a mascot of a Bigfoot carrying a case of beer through the bush, right? And they're just like, "Oh, was he carrying a case of beer? Did you see a moose walking on its hind legs?" So like after that, I just kind of didn't say nothing, but I knew what I saw, right? And like it'll stick with me forever. And like I don't really tell anybody, so I've watched a few episodes of this podcast and other ones, and I just thought, you know what, maybe there's people out there that would believe what I said, right? So, and that's my story. That was my encounter.
Man, that's pretty incredible, and it's funny how a lot of encounters just happen by, you just happen to look the right direction, see it at the right time, and see something that shouldn't be there. Prior to that encounter, what were your thoughts on Bigfoot, man? Did you know much about it, and were you a believer?
The only thing not really, right? Like, because I didn't really hear any stories. Like, you always see that video from the U.S. From the 70s or 60s of that video of it kind of walking from a distance, kind of looks over and just kind of keeps going in the bush. But other than that, I've watched shows on stuff like that, but not really. I don't know. It's not that I don't believe, but I kind of like to, like, I kind of believe, like, I don't believe stuff until I see it kind of thing. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, I'm not a skeptic. I'll believe someone's stories if, you think they're believable, but I just didn't really have a major thought on it until I saw it. And then it was like, holy mackerel. Then I start looking at other things, right? Other people and stuff, right? And then you figure out like, like it's everywhere, right? Like, like all through the US in the bush and then in, northern Canada and like Ontario, like in BC and Canada, like it's everywhere. But and this might sound stupid, but I've watched a lot of shows. It's like these guys see it and then they go to see where they saw it and there's no footprints. Like how, you know what I'm trying to say? Like where's the evidence is what I'm trying to get at. So until I saw it, I didn't really have a thought about it, right?
That happens a lot, man. These things do a lot of strange things and things that maybe do not make sense. I mean, you're seeing something that shouldn't be there, and then you go back and the evidence for it's gone. A lot of encounters, man, they talk about these things and the prints just stop, they disappear, weird stuff. And so, yeah, these are life-changing experiences. When you looked at this thing, and I know it was really brief, man, what details can you remember about it?
Well, like I said, like it didn't look like a primate of any sort. It just looked like a very large, like not you know what I'm trying to say? Like it was standing up like a person. It wasn't hunched over. Like I said, it was like it was really big and it was black and it marched, like swung its arms like really long, right? And took long strides. And like I said, it didn't move its face or head or look up or run, or do you know what I'm trying to say? Like when you think about it, like you're in the middle of nowhere and 30 below. Like if you're ever in the bush when it's 30 below in the middle of nowhere, like you can hear everything, right? Like it's so quiet, right? And for the creature not to look up or make any type of like what am I trying to say, like sense of anything else being around it was kind of strange to me, right? So, but yeah, like details, like I said, like I saw it, like it wasn't far from where I saw it. It was like it was a bridge, and it was just down off to the right of my vision. But yeah, details. It was just hairy, like black, big, swinging its arms, walking with a long stride. Is basically all I can really tell you, right? Like I didn't encounter it face to face, right? So that's what happened.
Some things really do stick with you. Like you remembered how it walked and the color of it and different things like that. But these things are definitely life changing, and having that kind of encounter unexpected and really not being into Bigfoot and all that before you had this encounter. But how did that encounter change your life?
I don't know about like with the change, it kind of broadens your mind. It kind of broadens your thoughts as to there are things out there that exist that people obviously think are fairy tale or lies or stories, right? it's just, you see something that, you know, you'll probably never see again is one thing, but to see something that not a lot of people have seen or know like of them is another thing, right? So that's kind of how it changed, right? It's just the perspective of, you know, maybe some of the people's BS stories are true, right? You know what I'm saying? On other things, right? Like not just on a Bigfoot, but on other things out there that might not be believable to, you know, to most people, but you know, from people that have seen things, right? Like I was saying, I think we were talking like some of the stuff. I've watched a lot of shows about stuff like in the US, right? Some of the animals or whatever they call them out there, like the wolf man and like the, you know, stuff like that, right? Then you kind of think, hey, those people are probably telling the truth, right? Not like, you know, you're thinking, yeah, this guy must have been on, you know, must have been drunk or something when he told the story. But no, that's what changed me is the perspective of other people's stories and what they saw, right? Is kind of what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It definitely opens up your eyes, because you know what you saw. And it makes you wonder when people are telling you these encounters and these stories, no matter how incredible they sound, it's like, wonder how much truth there is to that. And I think a lot about how many people are sitting on encounters and they're just afraid to come forward with these things because of the ridicule and the people making fun of you and things like that. So it takes a lot of guts to come forward. And I'm glad that you decided to do that. And, it helps people to know about this stuff, but it also helps you to talk about it and kind of get it off your chest, man. There's a lot of truth behind the fact that, to get over trauma, you need to talk about it. And I think that these things are traumatizing because what are you supposed to do with that type of encounter? Where do you put that? And you just can't talk about it to most people. I mean, it's getting a little better, but man, if you had the opportunity to see another one of these creatures, would you want to?
I don't know what to say about that, right? Like first, like I'll just comment on what you just said first. Um, yeah, so this was 1991 where I saw this thing, right? I was 20 years old. So that's how long it's taken me to actually like, to open my mouth. Like I've told, people here and there and they just kind of slough it off. But, so yeah, it's taken me a long time to actually like come forward and just say, hey man, like, like actually, like I was saying, your podcast, like I watched the Alberta guy and I'm like, you know what, maybe someone wants to hear my story. Maybe they don't. Maybe, you know what I'm trying to say? So that's why I reached out and I just thought, you know what? For maybe for believers or people that want to hear about stuff like this, that's why I want to tell my story. But to everyone else, I just, like I don't go around telling everybody. I just, I've told a few people over the years, but I just keep it to myself, right? So I just thought, I'll just get it out there and, like I said, it wasn't face to face, but I saw what I saw, right? And I just wanted to, to say like, hey man, they do exist, right? They're not like a fable or a fairy tale or they do exist. I saw what I saw, so that's why I decided to come forward, right? But to see another one, I don't know. That's a that's a good question, but it'd be kind of tough to like I probably wouldn't want to see one face to face.
Encounter number 2.
The first week of March, I was working, driving, and I was going out of town a bunch. Well, um, at the times I would come home during the week, I would come home late. I mean, I would get home at anywhere from 8 to 11, 12 o'clock at night. Well, on a Wednesday, or I want to say it was a Tuesday or a Wednesday night, I come home and a guy, we just worked, our base was just right down the road. So I would just ride from our office up here with a buddy of mine. Well, we come in that night, and the way he pulls in, his headlights shine across the field, across the road is 100 yards from where I'm sitting. Well, I seen a big old head on top of a toolbox that was about the size of a big pickup tire, and I seen the yellow eyes, but the yellow eyes was like a foot apart or more. And we sit there. I mean, me and Joe, we sit there and looked at it for probably a minute, and It never budged. It never blinked. Nothing. It just looked at us, and we looked at it. And uh, when I got out of the truck, and he left, and I didn't. I got to looking, but I couldn't see it then. After I got out of the vehicle and walked off, probably 4 or 5 foot, I couldn't see it then. It was gone. But I thought at first when I was looking, I thought, well, that was a big cat or something. Something huge got on top of that toolbox. But I was sitting there thinking, how in the world could anything get on top of that toolbox? It's metal. There's no shelves, or it's just something would have had to jump 7, 8 foot high to get on top of this toolbox. So I thought that was weird all in itself. So anyway, fast forward another day or two passes, and I don't think nothing else much about it. He and I talked about it a time or two. Well, that Friday we just happened to be off because it was raining. Well, that Friday is when the real seriousness started. I was standing outside. Uh, my wife and I live out here. We're staying out here in a big RV at a campground on the water where we work at. So it was about 2 or 3 o'clock that Friday, and it had been drizzling rain all day long. Well, I kept hearing something, and I kept hearing something, and so I walked outside. Well, when I walked outside, we have a little black dog that's about the size of a pit bull, maybe, or maybe about that size, but it's a cow dog, one of those hairy cow dogs. Well, something ran by me so fast. You know how lights look in pictures and stuff at night? The blur of the light. Something black ran by me at that speed of light like that. I just seen the black blur go by me within 6 foot of my camper. And I thought, man, that's weird. What the crap was that? And I thought, in my mind, I was thinking, well, that was our dog. It had to have been our dog. Well, so I go knock on the door and I tell my wife, I said, hand me that food. I'm going to feed Buck. Well, she looked at me like I was stupid. And she said, Buck's at our neighbor's house inside. Because when it would rain, he would put him in the house for us. And she said, he's inside up there, up the hill. I said, no, he's not. I said, he just ran by me. She said, no. She said, Buck's in the house up the hill. He's not out. Well, so that was about 3 or 4 o'clock that Friday. Well, then I thought that's weird. I know I seen something that's weird. Something just ran by me like I seen the blur of it go by. And I know I ain't imagining things. So I anyway, I go to the restroom, and as soon as I go to the restroom, me and my wife both hear something crawl across the. Now I'm sitting right here by it, and my camper, my big RV off the ground is probably 12, 14 foot high. We heard something run across the top of the camper. I thought, crap, what in the world is this? What is going on? So that happened. Well, I heard, so she told me, she said, go outside and see what that, she said, something just ran across the top of this camper. So I go back out, and look, as soon as I open the door, you know how them RVs are with the 2 steps that go down. Sitting right there on the bottom step of my camper is a 6-point deer head that's been nothing but a skull. There is a hairless, meatless, clean, I mean spotless, like you shined it up, skull of a 6-point deer sitting on the bottom of my RV step. I thought, now wait a minute, where'd that come from? So I got her and I said, come look at this. So at this time, I come back outside. I mean, and this before we knew any of this stuff. I didn't even know what a Bigfoot or a dog meant. If you'd have told me these things existed before that day, I would have probably spit in your face and laughing. Uh, but shortly after that, uh, about dusk, about dusk, it we started hearing a bunch of racket in the woods across the roads, which is about maybe 50 yards from where I'm sitting right now. We started hearing a bunch of racket in the woods. We started hearing a bunch of whistling, and you could tell the whistling wasn't like a bird, or it wasn't something you normally hear. It sounded like somebody standing across the road whistling at us. So that went on for probably an hour and a half, just hearing rackets and making noises. Well, the whole time, uh, I, that was strange. You know what I mean? That whole incident was strange that day when all that stuff started. And it popped off all at once, like just out of nowhere. But, well, then, you know, another day goes by that Saturday. So my wife goes grocery shopping or whatever, the dollar store. Uh, she goes and gets drinks. Well, a 12 pack of Pepsis comes missing up off the back of the pickup where I had set them. Um, Now I'm outside this whole time, so I don't see nothing. I mean, I don't see nothing. I don't see nobody walk up. It ain't nobody walk by and pick them up. They just disappeared. They literally. She bought 3 12 packs, and we had two. One of them's gone. Well, that goes into the story later on. I found the Pepsi cans where it's got bite marks all in them. Uh, I found 7 of the Pepsi cans that never was opened, but they got bite marks all in them, and first one thing and another. But that's what started it all. That's that day, that Friday, that seeing that Wednesday night with Joe, and uh then that Friday, all that activity happening, and from that point on, it's been wide open. I mean, it's nonstop.
So Adam, before that first encounter with your buddy, when you guys came home and you saw this head, you'd never heard or seen anything on that property prior to that at all, right? And how long have you guys been on that property?
Probably around 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that. Uh, I never seen nothing, never nothing. I mean, nothing. No, we had no kind of weirdness, really, no kind of nothing really to than other than you just ordinary, hear somebody hollering at night or a person one thing and another or this or that. But no, we never really had nothing going on here, really, ever.
That is a life-changing event, right? Like when this stuff starts happening to you, and I always like to ask my guests this question before we get into all these other encounters and stuff, because it is life-changing, especially walking out your front door and seeing that skull sitting on your front porch like that. That is, that's unusual behavior, but how did that change your life so far? I mean, this has got to be, pretty traumatizing.
Yeah, I quit my job because uh and which I mean I work now, but I left the job I was at where I look. It is to the impact that it's had to me and my wife. I had a job making 12, 14 to $1,800 a week. I mean, I would stay gone a bunch, but I was really knocking down the money. Um, but after that happened, I was just scared to death of her being here at night. by herself and coming out. And so I just left. I had to leave the job that I had, and that was one big thing. And then another, which that will come later on down the road of us talking, but another big factor of all this is the health issues we've had. Uh, but we can talk about that later. But yeah, it's life changing. I mean, I don't understand. And to this day, I don't understand. And the biggest question is why us?
You know, Adam, I've got this theory that, and it may be just because once you know they're there, you start seeing them more often. I don't know why that is, but I feel like if you've seen one of these creatures, your chances of seeing another cryptid, it goes way up. For whatever reason, I don't know that you're marked per se, but you definitely see them. The odds of seeing them again are really, really high. And I'm really sorry that this has impacted your life in such a negative way. These things aren't supposed to be there, and I'm just like you. I wouldn't want to leave my wife either. And for whatever reason, a lot of times too, you hear about these cases whenever you go to work or something. If there's a woman there at home by herself, the activity goes way up. I don't know if that's been the case for you, but why don't you walk us through, if you're open to it, some of these other encounters, some other things. I know you mentioned Dogman, and there's that correlation there, but why don't you get into some of these other encounters if you're open to it?
So after that first initial stuff started, I went across. Look, across the road from where this is at. Like I said, about 50 yards that way from where I'm sitting, there was an old RV or two sitting out against the edge of the woods where the record company this guy owned had parked, like they had wrecked on the interstate, so he had just parked them across the woods over here. Well, I got to noticing those campers. One of them campers got destroyed. I mean, from within a week or a 2 week period, it went from standing on its wheels, a whole solid camper, to it was toward. We ain't found the metal yet that come off of it. Uh, we haven't found the frame. I mean, the frame is gone. We ain't found the metal off the side of the camper yet, and we've looked everywhere. We've looked within a 15-acre radius of where I'm sitting. We still ain't found the metal. But I have a I got to looking out here one day, and there was things going on but we was really wasn't paying attention to it. Well, I kept looking across the road and up in a tree. I kept seeing things. So I kept looking and I kept looking. So I finally walked over and I took a picture of it, and it was the microwave out of that RV. The microwave was up in a tree about 30 foot high, and I thought, crap, that's weird. What took that microwave up that tree? It is sitting in the crouch of between it were a limb and the tree, and the pine tree. So then the next thing in the encounters was uh, me and another guy was riding. There's some 4-wheeler trails over here, and in this little wooded area, there's a couple of 4-wheeler trails. Well, the kid up the street had been riding his 4-wheeler over there. And what's weird about every bit of it is there's about 5 or 6 holes that's dug just like a grave over there in them woods where this boy's been riding that 4-wheeler and we've been walking. And the weird thing about it is where these holes are dug, there's big mounds of dirt beside them, but then there's cedar trees that's been stripped of bark, limbs, everything. They're all geometrically lined across them holes. I don't know what they mean. I don't know what they stand for. You see these, looks like graves. It looks like a perfect dug grave in the ground, in a place where no machine could get to, in a place where it would be impossible for somebody to dig it, I think. I don't know. But all along these holes, it's geometrically lined up perfectly together and perfectly aligned. There's cedar trees that's lined up perfect with them. I mean, it's the weirdest thing you'll ever see. But that boy was riding that four-wheeler, and one of his little jumps that he made was going across that hump where that hole was at. Well, he got knocked off that four-wheeler by something over there. And we went up there and looked, and there was not a tree or a limb or nothing within, we measured around 12, 14 foot from where that jump was at he made, and he was riding that. But something knocked him about 5 foot off that four-wheeler. Well, a few days later, I rode the golf cart up there. The boy rode his four-wheeler up there, and this guy down the street's got a little kid four-wheeler he rides around this neighborhood on. We were sitting there talking, and it kind of goes up hills. Well, Russ and them was sitting there on that four-wheeler, motors off, nothing around. His four-wheeler and him started rolling, and something pushed him about 14 foot, and then finally it stopped. Which we didn't see nothing, we didn't hear nothing, we didn't nothing. That was on Saturday evening when that happened. Now, this is about a month after the all this activity started happening with me and my wife.
The only answer I have is, there's just so much in God's universe, Adam, that we cannot explain. And that's the only thing I've been able to do with this stuff is put it in that kind of box. But going back to the first part of your encounter, well, actually, where you talk about the microwave and then those so-called, graves and stuff that are on that property. When you were out there, have you ever smelt anything or sensed any kind of feelings like overwhelming fear, things like that? And then I noticed you mentioned dogmen. What makes you think there's dogmen on the property as well?
I got pictures of them, but yeah, we've never smelt nothing. I've never smelt what people call the sewage smell or anything such as. We've never smelt nothing like that. And as far as dogmen, I have one photo that's on my phone and another guy has where there's clearly 4 of them in that one picture.
It keeps you up at night because I don't know what you're supposed to do with that. And I don't know why, Dogman and Bigfoot, are together like that. You hear about encounters like Martin Groves in the LBL and he had encounters with Bigfoot and Dogman all at once and they were all there together. And there's a lot of theories about that. And there's just so much we could get into. Man, you're definitely in a hot spot and they're everywhere on that property from what you're telling me. And I would advise you guys to be extremely careful because they are very territorial. But I would be curious to know what you think the reason that they're all there and why they popped up, man. What do you think started all this and why do you think they're on that property?
I don't know, man. See, that is the $1 million question. I've questioned whether they're after me. I ain't kidding. I want to tell y'all something, and you can take this for what it's worth. I don't care if you believe me. And this is why I don't know nothing about this stuff. Y'all know 100% more than I do. But the one thing I do know is these things can enter trees. Listen to what I'm telling you. Whether they're interdimensional beings, whether they're Nephilim, and that's where I'm at, whether they're spirit, these things can enter trees, and I'm going to tell you why, because I've caught them. This is dead in the middle of the day in a little open area where one 8 foot, 9 foot tall comes out of a tree. I ain't talking about it comes and jumps out of the tree. It comes out of the base of the tree and is in full form, and then it shifts and its shape shift into a down into it, because when it goes down in this video, it don't make a solid move like we would. Like if me and you were standing face to face and you went down on all four of your legs and arms, I mean, I would see that motion. It goes from standing straight up, full form, to there's a big blur like the predator thing, and then it's down on all fours in full form, and then the predator thing pops up again, and then it's about a 3 foot ball of light, and that 3 foot ball of light goes speeding off into the woods like a spaceship.
Well, the thing of it is Adam, nothing with this stuff surprises me anymore. You get into this, and a lot of times people have, what I call just a basic encounter where they bump into one or surprise one. But then you have this whole other side, what I call the woo side of things, where these weird things happen and all this. And I personally think that they're fallen angels, and they're shapeshifters. And that sounds really weird coming out of my mouth as a believer, and but I don't know what else to do with that. And it's the only thing that can answer some of these questions that we have. And it makes you just sit and look at the world completely different. But with all that said, and I know you touched on it just a little bit, but man, honestly, what are your thoughts on these things? What do you think they are?
I truly think it's the devil, and I truly think, because I believe in the good Lord, and I read the Bible, and I don't do like I should a lot of times, but I try to do right. I've studied a bunch on this stuff, especially since this stuff started, especially since all this stuff, and I've read, and uh, there's record going back to these things back in Genesis. But I ain't talking about the Nephilim. If you read the story of Esau in the Bible, where Esau and what was his brother's name? Jacob. One was a city man. I mean, paraphrasing, one was a city man, and then one was hairy from head to toe, covered in red hair. So that lived in the woods, that loved the venison, ever how you want to take that. So I wonder if that's a descendant of that, because a message that I have got very, very strongly is there's good and bad even in them. And when you have dog man encounters, and they both go hand in hand, and the thing that's pondering, and the things that I'm studying and I'm questioning now, is whether they're all in one. I'm beginning to wonder if they're not all in one, because I'm questioning whether or not there's no such thing as a dog man. It's just a Bigfoot, and they appear as a dog man. And because nature would tell you, if you have those two big beasts in the same area, they're going to fight. If you have two very large, unhumanoid, whatever you want to call it, predators within a 50-yard vicinity of each other, and they're both territorial, they're going to fight. I don't care who's around, they're going to fight. So in between all that scuffling and fighting, I really think there's a lot more to this dog man and Bigfoot stuff being in the same place at the same time, and a bunch of other things that I don't think we can comprehend, or nobody's even got to the bottom of it.
I will say, Adam, I am no expert at all by any means, man. I hear these encounters, but I can tell you this, man, you're heading down the right trail, the right direction with this stuff, because I think, in my opinion, the only way to look at this is in a biblical context, and I think there's just a lot of things in God's universe we do not understand, and I really think that that they're evil, man. I think they're pure evil, and I get asked all the time, if they're evil, why don't they just go around killing people and, you know, all these other things all the time. And I do think that people end up, you know, missing from them, and I think they do kill people. But just because something's evil doesn't mean they do evil all the time, right? Like there's times that the evil people aren't evil and they don't act evil, but you know, it definitely keeps you up at night and makes you wonder about all this stuff, man. And I would be curious to know, man, what you would say to somebody listening to this podcast that does not believe and that has never had an encounter, man. What would you say to them?
They need, for somebody like I was in February that knows nothing, would not have a clue as to anything we're talking about. Uh, don't believe in this. You don't know how sorely mistaken you are, because I am uh, probably the most rational human being uh, ever. Far as I've never believed in this stuff. I never even would have thought for once any of this stuff was real. And I'm sitting here on Sunday evening on my phone watching a podcast of some guys I know, the Woodwalker, watching Spencer and Greg and them, and they have Coonbo on, and they're talking about Dogman. Well, I don't have my headset on, so in the midst of watching this podcast, talking about uh, all the stuff that they were talking about, the encounters and the dog man, the first one thing and another, I go trouncing off in the woods. I tell my wife, I'm gonna go over here and see. I'm gonna look around and see if I can see anything or hear anything where this four-wheeler thing happened yesterday, because I had told her about it when getting pushed up the hill. Well, I'm not thinking. I'm sitting here listening to all these encounters and them talking about what dog men do and first one thing another. But I got it blasting on my phone out in the open. Look, I walked about 5 or 10 foot past where that happened, at where that hole is, that grave, whatever that is, I think it's over there. I walk about 5 or 10, and look, all of a sudden, I promise you, the hair on my toes started standing up. Look, it's one of the maybe 1 or 2 times that I've been here and been dealing with this stuff every day that I got scared to death. I thought I was dead. I don't know why. I never saw nothing. I got scared to death, and I was sitting there thinking I'm dead. I have walked over here in the woods, and I was sitting here watching this video out loud, and something don't like it, and I'm dead. I got the feeling I'm not going to make it out of the woods right here today. It's over with.
People really don't understand what's out in the woods and what is out there. I know for me personally, once I, started hearing about these encounters and had my own, I don't go off into the deep woods anymore. And I think that some of these missing 411 cases are tied to that. I don't think all of them, but I think there are definitely a lot out there that are. And, in my opinion, you are fortunate. You're very fortunate to be here talking about it. And, I appreciate you taking the time to share those encounters with our audience. And, man, please be careful. Keep your head on the swivel. If you see something, which I'm sure you do almost every day, but keep me in the loop, man. I want to hear about it.
Yeah, I will. I will definitely keep you updated on what's going on, and first one thing and another. I want to tell everybody, and I don't even know why I think this, really. But you're talking about they're all evil, and I've wondered that a bunch of times. But if you read the Bible and you read the stories of the devil, of Lucifer, whatever you want to say, the whole theme of hell, Lucifer, since the beginning, when he tried to deceive Jesus, deception, Look, deception. So I have a very strong feeling and urge that, because I've pondered myself, really. I mean, seriously. Look, because we're in a place and in a position, and these things have been so, they have had me and my wife both surrounded at one time. So if they wanted us, you understand what I'm saying? They could have done snatched mine and her head off, and we would be one of them 411 missing cases. They'd never found us because we was out here late at night, nobody around. They've done tore all the cameras off all the houses around here, so there's no video evidence. They tore every camera off every house around here. So they would, but deception, you understand? I think it's deception, and I think they're all deceiving people. And something I want to say before I go, me and my wife have started having serious health problems. Not just my wife has started having uh, serious stomach issues. Uh, I have, which I know I've been out here messing with this stuff 4 or 5 times, and I've been zapped pretty hard. Uh, I got fried about 2 weeks ago. I mean, literally. But I was probably videoing and doing something I shouldn't have been doing for real. When I knew they was there. Well, you know what I'm saying? When I knew they was across the road or they was up in that tree over there, and I was trying to video them and doing the stupid junk I was doing, I got fried, literally. I went to puking up blood. But anyway, Scott Carpenter's dead, and uh, there's a bunch of people that has started having a bunch of serious health problems, and they all correlate with each other. And it ain't just one; it's anybody you name. Or most, I'm saying, I won't say everybody like you or other people, but a lot of people that has dove off into this stuff right here that like we're dealing with, and is starting to investigate and go out and first one thing another, they're having a whole bunch of the same issues health wise. Somebody needs to do some videos on that and get to the bottom of it.
Encounter number 3.
My first encounter happened in a place called Black Star Canyon out in Orange County, California. It's in the out in the Santa Ana Mountains out there, the Cleveland National Forest. And a lot of people, they go, Orange County, you can't have had a Bigfoot sighting in Orange County. But the more I went back, I looked, because Riverside is right behind where I had my sightings. It's down on the other side of the hills. It's kind of out in the desert. And then I looked into Orange County itself, and before it became Orange County, there were sightings of Bigfoots. So, and the more I did my research, I'm like, holy crap, people have had sightings in all over Orange County. They're older reports. And then, you look in all the mountain ranges up in California, most of them have Bigfoot reports. You look at Big Bear, you look at the Los Angeles mountains, you look at Northern California, up in the Sierra Nevadas and stuff like that. And then there's something called a desert squatch out in San Diego, and it's out in the mountains, out in the desert. I mean, anything can happen up there. If a UFO flew down and landed right in front of me, I would not be surprised. You have Dogman reports up there now, Slender Man, and other activity. People have been murdered up there. Supposedly there was a war where a bunch of Indians were killed, which I found out was actually not true. But Indians still live up in those hills. It's very hard living. And then you have the possible Bigfoots. Now, the road up to that road up there is, if you don't know California, they have a lot of wildfires. So this is just a fire access road for the fire department. But they put this road in, it's a single lane road, not a single lane road each way, a single lane road, or it used to be. That basically they have a gate in front of, and it basically winds up into the mountains and ends up in Riverside, California. This area is very secluded. It's right in the middle of Orange County, but it's forested, and it goes up to about 4,500 feet. And so the more I started kind of going up there, I had previous experiences that I didn't know were Bigfoots. We had gone around a corner one day, and this beautiful oak tree, probably about 8 feet wide. I mean, it's huge, just this massive oak tree. It must be hundreds of years old, and it grows right down by the creek. So we're walking around that corner of this beautiful oak tree, and you hear bang, 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 and people shot guns up there. You know, the locals didn't like people on that road, especially after dark. And so I thought somebody was shooting a shotgun at us. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I looked at myself. I'm like, okay, I'm not hit. And I turned around and asked the people, everybody okay? And everybody's like, yeah. Then it happens again. It sounds more woody. And I didn't put two and two together at this point. And then you hear what sounds like a giant something or other. Boom, 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 away. And I just never put two and two together. I could tell something was walking. But I'm like, I just thought it was maybe some local kids trying to mess with us. So, and then going back to the very first time we went to Black Star Canyon, everybody told us, oh, you need to stay out of there. It's a bad area. You know, you shouldn't go up there. We were walking down the road, and we got about halfway down to that first turn, and essentially something was crouched down, and I'm 6'2", and this thing was as tall as me, crouched down. I'm like, okay. And then we got within about 30 feet of it, and it stood up and literally one step the road and then disappeared behind a tree. And I didn't know at the time, but that tree, if you go up behind there, there's a trail that leads up the mountain. And so, you know, that gives them a height advantage. They can get up there and they can look down. They can see you from anywhere up there. I mean, they have the total height advantage because you can't go up there unless you're allowed to. But so that was my very first experience. And I didn't put any of this together until Halloween night. So I'm talking to this crew, and I'm like, okay, this is, you know, I always put a safety spiel together. And I told everybody had to stick together, nobody wander off. Two girls were over to my left, and there's a little mound, and then the fence is down below the mound, and then it kind of opens up into a pasture. And literally there's trees kind of horseshoed out there, right? And it's kind of open, and there's a few tall trees in the middle. And there's a little tiny tree that was only about, I think it was about 10 feet tall at the very top, but it was only, you know, probably about 3 or 4 inches diameter around the trunk was. So they go, hey, somebody just threw rocks at us. And I'm thinking, okay, there's teenagers up here. They're just over there trespassing, being stupid. And they're like trying to scare us out of here, right? So I said, okay, you know, let me know if it happens again. Well, she goes, no, it just happened again. I'm like, where are the rocks landing? Oh, right at our feet. I'm like, okay, what? That's weird. So I took the 6 biggest guys, and I'm like, we walked over on top of that berm, and we're looking down there, and I'm not seeing anything. It's dusk. It's not dark. It's not light. It's kind of in between. And I had a little monitor flashlight on my hat, and so I start scanning from left to right. I start looking this way. I'm like looking for these kids. I'm like, these kids are going to get chewed out, right? And I get about to 45 degrees this way, and I kid you not, there's this huge, hairy thing, silvery gray, standing there. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'2", you know, I'm a big burly guy. I'm a little overweight, unfortunately. But this thing was at least double my height and maybe 3 or 4 of me wide. I mean, it was as wide as I could put my arms out. That's how wide this thing is. It must have been 5-6 feet wide. And the head on that thing, I mean, it looked like a giant watermelon. I mean, talk about coned head. And it was just standing there. And I'm like, I looked at the other guys. I'm like, am I seeing this? You know, I don't do drugs. I'm like, am I actually seeing this? And they're like, yeah, that's a Bigfoot. I'm like, okay, it's not just me. You know, I'm trying to check myself to make sure I'm not like seeing things. I'm like pinching myself. This thing's real. And I guess after I picked my jaw up off the ground, they go, hey, Matt, yeah, you need to go get a camera or something. You have a camera with you? And I should have got the video camera. I carried a little kit. I had a video camera, a little old Sony, 20-year-old Sony Handycam. This back in the day, it was only a couple of years old, but that had night vision. But I went and got the little Coolpix. So this little Coolpix has this little tiny flash, right, that you flip up. You've all seen those. And so I take a picture of this thing, and the flash goes off. Oh my God, this thing went like this, and it growled at us. I'm like, oh my God, we're gonna get eaten or something, it's going to come over here and just rip us to shreds. I mean, it could have gotten to us a couple, 3 or 4 steps. I mean, we couldn't have run away fast enough. And so I go like this. I'm like looking down at the picture. I'm like, oh, I didn't get it. It's just dark. It's too dark. And I even had my monitors like, shining on it. And it was about 30 feet away. And so, smart guy I am, I'll go, oh, let's take a look. I guess I had a death wish that night or something, right? So I snap another one, and it just looks at us. It's like, are you serious? And so then we just standing there. I'm like, I looked at the picture. I'm like, okay, I see something. It was just dark. All you saw was like a black outline and then black out behind it. And we tried, took it to multiple people that do photography, and they couldn't fix it. When we negative it, you could kind of see an outline, but you couldn't see it at all. And it was just too dark, unfortunately. So anyways, as I'm standing there, I'm like sitting there. We're just having a staring contest at this point in time. And so I go, we can see you, right? And it kind of growled at us again. And then it walks over. It takes about a foot, one step. It covered about 5 or 6 feet in just a very short step. Then took another step behind that tree I was talking to you about with a real small diameter. And I think we measured it at 12 feet or something like that. So it's standing behind this tree. And imagine your belly button, at the top of the tree, and the head, chest and head, 3 or 4 feet above that. And it's probably about 3 feet above that, I think. So it was pushing 14, 15 feet. And it was just standing there. And I go, we can still see you. And it grabs the tree with its hands. It just grabs the tree. And I didn't know that they picked up trees and threw at people or shook trees or anything at that point. And so I'm like, okay. And then it stomps off. I mean, when it walked over there, it didn't make any noise. But man, it went boom, boom, boom. It shook the ground. It felt like we were having an earthquake. I kept my eyes open the rest of the night, but I never did see it again. And so going home, and my wife laughs about this every time I say this, I call her up like a bumbling fool. Oh my God, they're real, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, slow down. What's real? And I'm like, I just saw Bigfoot. She's like, oh my God, what are you smoking? What did they give you? Have you gotten enough sleep? So I'm like, no, but they're real. And, I have this saying, I don't expect anyone to believe until you've had an encounter. And you can put this to anything, ghost, UFO, Bigfoot, whatever, where you can say it couldn't be anything else but, right? So she's seen things, but she can't say it was a Bigfoot for sure. I mean, I've been lucky enough to have, after that, I started seeing them all the time. Daytime, nighttime. I was going up there all hours of the day and night. I mean, I would go up there at 8 o'clock in the morning and come home at 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon if I was off and Amanda was working. Or I'd go up there at, 7, 8 o'clock, come home at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and just wandering around, walking up and down the trail. And they would show themselves to me every once in a while. I got a picture of one standing, just basically trying to look like a tree. It's like standing sideways, and you can see the head port for, this was taken a long, long time ago, with a 5 megapixel flip camera. So, yeah, the technology back then. And then, back then you could see it. I mean, you can zoom in, you could see the hair, the light shining off the hair. It was the coolest thing. And you can see another one staying right next to it. But as time went on, I started to have more and more encounters. I mean, I walked out one night and I had not had any experiences at all. But I was dead quiet, nothing. And it was just basically like a night hike. And seeing animals. There was no grasshoppers making any noise, no noise at all. And I'm like, what the hell is going on tonight? And so I'm walking out, and I felt like I was being watched. And so I walked past the gate, and right by where the gate is, it kind of goes up. It's probably about 20, 25 feet high, and it kind of wraps around to one side and kind of smooths out the little hill. And then it goes all the way down about, I don't know, another 3 or 4, like a football field length. And up there, then it flattens out. There's trees all along there. So I'm walking out past the gate, and there's an old ranch that used to be there. It's Old Irvine Ranch Conservancy, and that's basically the company that manages that property. And so I just felt like I was being watched. And so I had a flashlight, I think it was like 2,000 lumens. So it's like a headlight. And I start scanning because I thought maybe there was a deer or something over there. So I'm scanning left to right, and I get to this point where there's a Bigfoot standing right there. It was brown. It was about my height and shape, and it was just standing there staring at me like, what's going on, buddy? And as soon as I spotlighted it, it kind of gave me a look. It was this disapproval look. And then it literally did the Patterson Gimlin film. It literally did the whole body turn. It took one step, and then another step, and then in the middle of the second step, it turned its whole body, the whole upper body towards me, and looked at me, and I'm like, holy crap, that's the Patterson Gimlin gape right there. And then it took another step, and then pretty much, I think it went about 100 yards in about 5 or 6 steps. It just disappeared. And I know exactly where it went because I followed up later that night, but it didn't make any noise. So that didn't make any sense to me. So I kind of snuck up into that area. Then I'm walking back there, and there's a bunch of old dead branches and deadfall and all this stuff. And I'm walking, I'm going, like, how did this thing not make any noise? And in my research, I figured out they must have, we have fat in the bottom of our heels and the balls of our feet and stuff like that to kind of pat us. But it makes me wonder if they have more fat in the bottoms of their feet all along, so that when they walk on something, and it doesn't make a lot of noise. It's kind of a stealthy kind of thing where they can walk and hit something or crunch on something, and it just absorbs instead of being crushed. So I think that's probably what happened. But I did so many tours up there. We were walking back one night, and it was probably about 7 or 8 o'clock, and a juvenile literally comes running down the side of the hill, and it was like a blur. And they had just smoothed out the road with sand. So it was soft sand. And I don't think this thing knew it. And it had pushed most of it. It was gravel and sand. So they had pushed most of it to the side where the barbed wire fence was. And this thing literally comes running by. It's just a blur. And it steps right over the barbed wire fence, was probably about 4 feet high. And then disappears down into that creek bed, right? So it left a heel print about that big. We're in the sand where the sand had bermed. It crushed it down. I'm like, the people were walking ahead of me. I'm like, did you see that? They're like, the Bigfoot? I'm like, yeah, okay, you saw it too. Like, it just ran right in front of us. It was probably about 7 or 8 o'clock. It wasn't quite dark yet, but it just ran right by us. I figured out later that the more of the research I did, I kept seeing them along this river bed. And so this dry river bed. And so I started kind of doing some research down there. I never found any tracks, unfortunately, but the more I researched in there, the more I figured out they were using that as a highway. They use creeks as a highway. Because if you look at it, the trail's up about 8 or 9 feet above where the bottom of that riverbed is. And there's a lot of rocks and stuff like that. So you're not going to leave prints unless it's wet. And so they're using that as a highway. They're coming up and down through the mountain range, going through there. So I'm like, I got a smart idea. And this was not my last encounter, but the last one I actually saw one. This is probably my 20th encounter up there, where I've actually, it was a Bigfoot where I could say it couldn't be anything else but a Bigfoot. And so I'm walking up there to just do ghost hunting. And as I'm walking up, I got up to where the mine was, which is about 1.5 miles from where my car was parked. And I'm up about, 1,000 feet, 1,500. No, it's actually about 3,000 feet up in the mountains. And I hear this, I thought it was a mountain lion. I kept hearing growling. And I think they're mimicking a mountain lion. So I'm up there, and I keep hearing behind me, there's barbed wire fences on both sides of me, probably about at least 4 feet high. And so I'm like, okay, I put the camera on this side of the road, the left side of the road, and I took the audio recorder and put it in the nook of a tree right there. And I walked back over stupidly to where that barbed wire fence was. And I'm like, okay, if a cat jumps over and gets me, at least you'll know what happened to me, right? So I'm sitting there. There's trees, of course, and then there's bushes, right? And there's this bush that's probably about 6 feet wide and probably about 7 or 8 feet tall. And all of a sudden I hear this commotion. And I'm like, what is that? And it's coming from the river bottom. And I start hearing something like moving. This bush starts going back and forth, and you're, I'm like, oh my God, it's a Bigfoot. And I think it was trying to scare me out of there. And they must have been hunting because I'd seen them. We actually seen them in a circle as we went up towards the mine. As you get up another 100 feet and about 40, 50 feet up the trail, you can look down into the valley. You can see where the creek is, and it flattens out down there. Anyways, so this goes on for, it felt like forever, but it's probably about 30, 40 seconds. And then I just grabbed my handy cam and I'm recording this. And of course, I didn't have enough IR light because it was just too dark. I could see it, the tree moving with my eyes, but the camera couldn't pick it up. It was about 10 feet away from where I was. And so back and forth the tree goes and the grunting. And then all of a sudden I see it take off in the clearing, running up the creek bed. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like, holy crap, I just got a Bigfoot on camera, right? And no, actually I didn't. Unfortunately not. So I start walking down the road, and this road kind of goes around and swerves to the left a little bit, and the mountain range kind of comes down like this, and there's a plateau there where it kind of smooths out, where they kind of cut through the side of the hill. And so I'm walking by there, and I'm right next to it. I mean, I'm like a foot away from the side because I didn't want to be next to the creek bed. I was staying as far away from the creek bed as I could because I could kind of hear growling happening on that side, like it was still following me. And all of a sudden, I walk by and I look over to the corner of my eye, and literally there's this thing. It's probably my height, crouched down, and it's just standing there, two red eyes. I didn't look. I kind of turned and looked at it and went, oh crap. I took about 6 steps, and I called that one the bouncer. There was 2, I think they were twins. Big brown one. The brown one seemed to be more stocky than tall. The black ones seemed to be the taller ones. But anyways, this thing was probably about 5 or 6 feet wide, and it was probably like 6 or 7 feet tall, maybe 8 feet. But it was as wide as it was almost tall. And it just looks at me as I walk by, and I didn't stop because I think if I had stopped, I mean, I could have reached out. It could have reached out and touched me. I mean, I could have grabbed some fur and run. I don't think my brain's going, can I outrun this thing? I'm like, no, don't do it. I was terrified. I was like, holy crap. I was like a foot away from this thing. I mean, literally a foot away from this thing. And I took about 6 steps to turn around. It was gone. No noise, just gone. But so I started walking down after that, and I hear like something like a bulldozer going through the brush on top of me. It had flanked me, I think. It either flanked me, it went up the side of a wall, or there was multiples, which there probably was. Probably a family group, probably hunting. But it followed me down around the corner and then almost all the way out to the gate because it's basically forest. You can hear them going over there. I thought I heard them kind of make gorilla sounds like, you can hear them chit-chattering. And got to the gate, and I kept walking. I had to go another, 300 or 400 feet down. And I was like, holy crap. But that was the last time. I saw silver gray one. I saw brown, I saw black, and I think I saw red up there. So, and that's all the same colors as Gigantopithecus supposedly were. That was my last encounter. I went up, it took me 3 months to go back up there after that. I was so terrified of that place. I'm like, I got to get back on the horse. I got to go back up there.
I don't blame you, man. You definitely come across a hot spot, and you're right, man. They must have just gotten used to you being in the area, and there's a lot to unpack there. But one of the things I like to ask people right off the bat, from somebody who wasn't a believer, who had an encounter, saw these things, how did that impact your life, man?
Well, I started doing more research into them, spending a lot more time on the computer, doing research, trying to figure out about them. I started watching that show, Finding Bigfoot and stuff like that, and trying to learn as much as I could. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, and I watched all the shows, the Unsolved Mysteries, and, what was that one show? What was it? Unsolved Mysteries, Findings, and all those other shows. And they always had a little bit of Bigfoot stuff on there. I forget the one that was real popular. Basically, it was almost all Bigfoot stuff. But I'll think of it as soon as we're done here. But anyways, yeah, the more I researched it, the more I was just in love with it. The more I just kept, my wife thought I was crazier and crazier than I already was. So, yeah, I started telling people about it. They're like, "You're dude, there's no way." I mean, I've met several other Bigfooters. They're like, "No, there's no Bigfoots up there." I'm like, "You should go up there and look before you tell me no. You go do your own research." I mean, we were just back there for my dad's birthday back in July, and we went up there, and I took a friend of ours from Orange County, and we saw him. You can see him. In fact, we got a thermal image of something behind one of the trees. It had gone through and was behind it. There's trees that were kind of in a line, and you could see it kind of step out. I got a picture of it right as it stepped out and then step behind another tree. And he's like, "Oh my God, they are here." I'm like, "Yeah, this is a hot spot for them." And since I left, there seems to be like there's generations of them. I think the silver gray one, I always thought that maybe it just showed itself because it didn't care because it was older. Maybe it just didn't, maybe it got caught walking across the area or was just curious about what we were doing. Maybe it was just out there watching me that night. I don't know. It's like, oh, yep, he's here. Go watch, see what he's doing. I mean, we were out there one night with this couple, and we got there at like 11 a.m. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was doing this call blasting, no, nothing. So we got out to where the gate was, and right above us, up on that plateau, you hear this. Oh! I mean, it was reverberating off of our chests, and it just stopped us in our tracks. I just turned off the audio recorder, of course, and as soon as I got it on, I got the last like 2 seconds of it. So you hear, oh, I'm like, that didn't do it justice. I mean, that thing was loud.
You sound a lot like me, and once you know these things are real and they're out there, you kind of go down this rabbit hole of research and trying to figure out what these things are and what's going on. And I would have been just like you that last encounter you had where you were so close to it. I'd have been afraid to go back too, man, because with these things you never know. But man, what do you think kept you safe that night?
I think it did exactly what it wanted to. It wanted to chase me out. I don't think it felt threatened. Now, if I was carrying a gun or if I turned and pointed something at it or tried to take a knife out at it, then it probably would have done something. I wouldn't be sitting here. People disappear up in those hills all the time.
Yeah, I think you're right, man. I think they know what a gun is. I think they know what a knife is, and they obviously didn't see it as a threat. So, man, it's smart that you didn't do any of that stuff because I think some of the missing 411 people are because of those kind of situations. Maybe I don't know for sure, but did you ever see really good details of any of the faces? And then also, did you ever smell anything during those encounters at all?
Never smell anything during the encounters usually. We would be walking up there and you just get this smell it smelled like skunk. It was this skunky, like wet dog smell. And you're like, what? Oh, and it'd be there for like a second or two and then it'd go away. And I'm pretty sure they were down below us in the creek, because the creek was down below as you walked in by the gate, and then it kind of went off to the side and went over. And I found out later there's actually over on the other side, other hill that's in there, because it kind of Black Star's on this side of the mountain, and then there's limestone and all these other canyons where it kind of comes down like this. And so on the other side there's cave systems. It's old limestone and sandstone. So caves have been carved out through water and all that stuff running through there. And so I'm pretty sure that was just basically an area they stayed at. I also know that if you went towards Irvine Lake, which was right through the middle of the two hills, you kind of walked along the side of the creek and then it would turn to the left and we would always go right, because you could go there, but again, it's private property. I think they were hanging out. There was a bunch of trees in the middle, and we'd always see eye shine over there. We take the night vision binoculars, and I didn't have one that recorded at that point. Now I do. I have military gear, but you could see the eye shine, and you're like, oh my God, Like I was saying that one day we were up where the mine was, and you're probably 200 feet above them, and you can see the creek run by, and we just saw them sitting in a circle, and they were almost like they were communicating. We couldn't hear them; they were too far away. But they couldn't see us, thank God. We were kind of standing the lip of the hill. If you stood back far enough, you could see them, but they couldn't quite see you. I'm sure they picked up on us sooner or later. They couldn't smell us from up there either. But they were in a circle, and they were kind of like pointing at each other, and then two of them got up and walked away up the creek. So I think they were kind of planning out their thing for the night. I think there was they were all different shapes and sizes. But as when we first moved to Texas, I put an ad out on Facebook, and a guy responded to me, and he's saying everything, that is Bigfoot related. I have this, this, and this, and this, and I have tree bends, I have tree knocks, I have howls, I have screams. I'm getting things thrown at my trailer. My trailer's been rocked. I've seen Bigfoot stick their head in the windows, and tree bends forever. I'm like, dude, this guy's sounds like he's nuts, right? But he's saying all the right things, and I could tell he didn't know what was going on. He was terrified. And so his name was Joe, and unfortunately he passed away last year. And so his property is like a football field. It's like 55 acres. He has a logging road, and then basically he had these beautiful pine trees that were probably 100 years old. They were probably, some of them were 2 or 3 feet across. I mean, they were big enough that you could go stand behind it and you couldn't see us. But and they came down almost to like the first 20 yards of his property. He mainly stayed in the front part of the property, and the back was mainly forest. And he lived up in the Sabine National Forest. So I went out there. I'm like, oh my God, this guy, it was just too good to be true. I'm like, I got to go check this out. He was right. Holy crap. I got Bigfoot's walking through my property night and day. I see him all the time. I'm like, this guy's like smoking something, right? He was telling the truth. So we spent almost 3 years researching up there. And we were up there like at least once a month. And we spent a weekends up there. We stayed with him. And so he had his trailer on the left side of his property, and he had the forest right there. And he had a old logging road that he actually cleared that went up to the back of his property on the left and the right. And so we had just taken a break, and I had all the gear. He had a picnic table, and we're sitting out at his picnic table, and we're looking up towards the top of his property on the left. And as I'm sitting there, it wasn't night. It was the middle of the day, so it's very clear. You can see forever. You can see the back of his property real easy. Even though it's kind of if you look into the forest, you can't see very far in because it's so thick. But long story short, sitting there, and I look up. I'm like, wait a minute. Is there a tree that's supposed to be there in the middle of the road? And I'm like, Joe, I kind of nudged him because he was sitting on this side of me, on my right side. I'm like, look up there. And he's like, is that a tree? He's like, no, there's no tree there, Matt. This huge thing. I think it was the dominant male. And so it's literally mid-stride. I mean, like, again, Patterson Gimlin, it's literally turned the whole upper body looking right at us, right? And so I had a monocular, not a night vision, just a regular monocular. And so I put it up to my eye, and I started zooming in. I can see the head. This is massive. I mean, this is at least 14, 15, maybe 15, 16 feet, maybe bigger than that. Because, I mean, the stride was from one side of the road to the other. I mean, it literally was the middle of this thing was right in the middle of the road, the upper torso. And so I started zooming in. I can see the mouth. So it had fur all the way except around here, right? And you can see the skin. It was kind of a light brownish color, and it looked like almost like a monkey or a gorilla's. And so I'm looking at it. I didn't really look at the nose, and so I start going up to the eye. Now Joe had told me this is a black one, right? He had told me some of them look like they're wearing sunglasses, and I'm like, what in the world? I'm like, what is he talking about? So let's talk about the theory of them having like night vision, right? If you've ever seen an alligator or a shark, they'll have lenses that come down to protect their eyes when they go to eat, right? So maybe this thing does too. Maybe it has bioluminescence around its eyes. I don't know. Or maybe it's just dark black skin. I don't know. But I'm looking at this thing, and the eyeball, I mean, where the eye was probably about the size of a baseball. It was huge. And I'm looking at it, and it's all black. And I start looking at the eye, and where the eyeball was like white. I didn't see any like pupil or anything. I just saw white. Maybe it was still too far away for me to get really good detail. But I mean, this thing was probably like 400 or 500 yards away from us. It did look like it was wearing sunglasses, but it had this white thing right in the middle of that. And so I put the binoculars down and I went to say something to Joe. I looked back, it was gone.
That is extremely wild, and I've never heard of anybody describe the eyes like that. And I definitely want to have you back on, Matt, because I know you've got so much to unpack there. And it's unfortunate Joe passed away, but I'm glad you were able to spend that time with him and get him some answers, because this stuff leaves you scratching your head. And there's a lot to unpack there. But with your experiences and things that you've had, man, I'm really curious to know what your opinion is on these creatures. For one, they're definitely territorial. I mean, I think you've proven that, and they hang out in areas that I don't think they migrate. I think they kind of stay in one area maybe. But what do you think these things are, man? If you had to take a guess, what do you think they are?
If I had to guess, I would say they're probably maybe a cross between Gigantopithecus and humans. I mean, they could just be some kind of human species that we just don't know of. Maybe they're like an even older species of human that nobody's ever really looked at. I'm pretty sure, I'm not going to say the word, but I'm pretty sure Big Brother knows exactly what they are.
I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's episode as much as I did. Such a strange world. There's so much in God's universe that I don't think we'll ever understand why we're here. We're always searching for answers. We're looking for answers. But it's important to remember that these are real people behind these encounters, and it's so easy to get wrapped up on the encounter, and that's the fun part. But we never think about how it affects people, their lives, and their families, and that's important to me on this channel. So if you've been sitting on an encounter and you're looking for a safe place to share it with, Mysteries Unknown is a great place to do that. I promise you that this is a safe platform for you to come forward and share your encounters. Guys, everybody who just takes the time out of their busy schedule to watch this show, it means a whole lot to me. So if you like this, if you're seeing value in it, make sure to like and subscribe. Also, too, I want to shout out my buddy Daniel with the Cryptid Podcast. If you love this channel, you will absolutely love his. So make sure you guys go check it out. Couldn't do this podcast without you. I love talking to everybody and just giving you guys a safe platform to share your encounters. So if you've got an encounter you would like to send me, you can send it to me by email at mysteriesunknownpodcast@gmail.com. I do my very best to reach back out to everybody. It might take me a minute, but I will get back to you guys, I promise. All my members, thanks for the support. Everybody who likes this video, who shares it, who subscribes, who watches, thank you guys so much for all you do for me at Mysteries Unknown. I couldn't do this podcast without you, but stay prayed up, guys. We'll see you in the next episode.